All right, class, we're going to continue our conversation about deviance today. First, I want to compliment all of your choices. There's a fun mix of like murderers and gangs, there are historical figures that are in there, people who fought to change societies for the better and change our values. So I'm really excited to see what you're going to do with your portfolios and all the different things you'll discover. Today, our topic is going to be following the symbolic interactionist view of deviance. They want to know why people decide to be deviant, what encourages them to choose to break the norms versus follow the norms. So we're going to go through and kind of look at these theories. You should be doing your symbolic worksheet along with the notes today. So if you open that up, you'll see the first page is the blank document for you to fill in with your information. The second page is a sample of what it would look like filled in. So I used cartoon villains that are out there just to illustrate what it might look like and the types of ways of adding these terms into your lesson. All right, so the first thing we look at would be differential association theory. All right, this believes that the reason why people choose to be deviant is because they're actually raised to be deviant. It's the way that they've been taught from early on, or it's the types of people that they surround themselves with. And because of the groups that they associate with, that is what teaches them to be deviant. It was a theory developed by Edwin Sutherland, and so he says that our primary group members, our family, our friends, our neighbors, the people that we have the most contact with, they actually are deviant in and of themselves. And so therefore they teach us that deviance is acceptable. This is the appropriate way to act. And so they learn alternative norms compared to what the dominant culture might teach their friends and family, how they would socialize new members. So to give evidence to support Sutherland's theory and to talk about how differential association theory works, here's just a brief explanation, description of it. All right, we know that families are usually your first primary group. You can't really choose your family. You're born into it, you're adopted into it, and so it's given to you. All right, our family is the people that we have the most contact with, and so they're the first ones that teach us what does it mean to be an active member of society, and they're the main force behind our socialization and picking up the norms of a society. Right? We know that if an individual has an immediate family member who served time in prison, they're also much more likely to serve time in prison themselves. So an immediate family member might be a sibling, might be a father, a mother. The rates drop if you look at your extended family, so uncles, aunts, cousins, those type of things. I think it's if you have one of an extended family member in prison, you have maybe a 30% chance of also serving time in prison yourself. And so an argument for differential association is the children learn from their parents what is appropriate to do, and therefore they learn that this is an okay for them to mimic versus they should change their behaviors. Right? If you have a parent who thinks it's okay to steal or lie or be rude, well, that's normal in your house. That's normal about how you behave. And so therefore, when you get older, you also think it's more acceptable to steal or lie or be rude, and you mimic those deviant actions. All right, we also know that your friends, your peer groups, those are also a big socialization force and would be the second example of your primary groups. Right, so if we look at neighborhoods, if you're in a deviant style neighborhood, you're also much more likely to be deviant in and of yourself. Good counsel is obviously different, where we come from various parts across Maryland, Virginia, DC. But traditionally in public schools, you go to school with the people who live in the same neighborhood as you. And so therefore, your peer groups who you become friends with at school transition into your adulthood life. And so if you're raised around deviant friends, deviant peers, you're also more likely to be deviant growing up. So there are these bad neighborhoods and there are good neighborhoods. All right, ways to know if this is a deviant neighborhood versus not. If I was going to buy a new house and I was trying to decide, is this a deviant neighborhood, if this is a bad neighborhood, well, there's a lot of things that you might see that would be a status symbol to indicate that this is a more deviant neighborhood, a more bad type neighborhood. Maybe there's more graffiti, There's more trash on the street, boarded up windows. You might see crimes being committed in the streets, and so drug dealing or theft or break-ins, things like that. There might be bars on windows. Right? All of these things show that there tends to be a lot of crime within the neighborhood, therefore it might be a deviant spot. We see a lot of gang membership within these neighborhoods that we would call bad. Right? It's safer to be in the gang than to be out of the gang. And so by doing that, it indicates that for us, it's better to be the deviant person, because if I'm in the gang, I've got people who will protect me. I'm probably not going to be the target of the different crimes. And so it normalizes the behavior. If you look at neighborhoods with high gang membership rates, the gang members actually are active members in the community, and they do a lot of things to help the community survive, offering their own regulation force if the police aren't there to do their job. They run like charity benefits, and they donate money back to the neighborhood. So even though they're doing these deviant actions in the eyes of the dominant culture, they also are doing some helpful things within their community, and those deviant norms lead to the acceptance of gang membership a little bit more. All right, so what differential association theory would state is the reason why we're deviant is because of our primary group members, who we spend most of our time with. And if you have a family member, or if you have a neighborhood that supports deviant norms, you are also going to be more deviant yourself. All right, so, that's very small. Sorry, don't know why it looks that small. Go through and practice applying differential association theory to your case study. Think about their family life, maybe how they were raised and the norms that their parents taught them. Think about the people they have contact with, their friends, their neighborhood. Right? Are they in a group where people support the same norms as them? Maybe they've taught them to be deviant. Right? So take a minute and go ahead and fill in that part of your chart, or continue with the lesson, and we'll keep going from there. Right. Another theory that would explain why people become deviant is because of the status and the position that they hold within society. All right, this is really similar with Cooley's looking glass self that we talked about earlier this year. Just a reminder, Cooley says that our identity, our sense of self, it comes from the people we surround ourselves with. And so therefore our identity, our personality is built upon how other people treat us. Right? Well, if other people treat me like I'm deviant, if other people treat me like I have a negative status, right, sometimes these stereotyped beliefs actually become the reality, and people live up to those expectations. Right, so for example, this picture you see on the slide here, right, these stereotypes, beliefs about people that are Muslim, people who are Middle Eastern, right, that's not real. But if they're constantly being questioned, being second-guessed, being watched and observed, right, well, maybe they might be more defensive, they might become more antagonistic, and they might live up to those stereotypes, beliefs of being aggressive, violent people, just because society puts all this pressure upon them that they think it becomes part of their identity. Right, so the second theory I want you to look at is labeling theory. How the status that people have actually makes an individual become deviant, because that's what society teaches them they are, and that's the space that they're told to fit into. All right, so here's some evidence to support that idea. All right, we do know that a lot of people are susceptible to labels. If I start treating you a certain way, if I start interacting with you differently than I would for another person, well, then maybe you start believing that stereotype belief I have about you, the discriminations that I'm placing on your shoulders, that it actually creates this persona within you. There was a case study done by sociologists. It's called The Saints and the Roughnecks. And it happens in all schools, but they documented this in like a small rural area. What they did is they just tracked cases of students breaking the rules. This was done mostly with high school students, so people between the ages of 15 to 19. And they looked at rates of skipping school, theft, drinking underage, car accidents, speedings, so minor little infractions of the law. And then they looked at how were the police officers, how were their school systems dealing with these students. If the students were from good families. They came from the right side of the tracks. Their families had high, prestigious, well-respected positions within society. Well, the researchers called these students the saints. They would do bad things, but they would be let off with a warning. So don't skip school. I'm not going to tell your parents, but make sure you're on time next day. I'm really upset that you were caught drinking underage. I'm going to give you this fine. You're going to do some community service, but we're not going to send you to jail. We're not going to have you serve time for breaking the law. All right? But our roughnecks, well, those were students whose families were in bad standing within the community. Their families didn't have well-respected positions. They were from like the bad side of the neighborhood. And so when those students broke the rules, they were held accountable. You skipped class, you have detention. You were caught drinking, you have to go and serve time in jail. Right? They had these very strict penalties that were held against them. Both groups are breaking the exact same laws, but because the saints were well respected and thought of as good people, they weren't held accountable. But our roughnecks that had a negative status in the community, they were punished for the exact same actions. Right? Some people, they embrace these negative labels. They like being seen as bad people. Biker gangs. The more crimes you committed, the more dirty and tatted up you are, the better respected you are within that community. And so some people actually like being seen as deviant. They live up to that status, those stereotypes placed upon them. And because those stereotypes are reinforced, they have actually become what society has told them they would be. Right? Most people don't like these negative statuses being applied to them. They don't want to be seen as a low-ranking member within society. And so what they do is they try to remove the labels by using a technique of neutralization. Right? They're basically excuses. You're trying to remove the bad label by giving a justification for your deviant behavior, why you needed to do this. So I'll give a few examples of them. You've probably used more than one of them. I've used almost all of them. So we'll come up with examples, and this will help you understand how individuals try to remove those negative labels that have been placed upon them. A most common one would be denial of responsibility. It's not my fault. It was an accident. I didn't realize this was going to happen. So yeah, it was roughhousing with my sister, but I didn't really mean to push her down the stairs. It was an accident. We just were playing too rough. Right? Yeah, what I did was bad, but what so-and-so did was so much worse. And so, yeah, I pushed her, but she pulled my hair, and that's really bad. Right? So sometimes we say we're not really responsible for the negative actions, even though these bad things occurred. We could use denial of injury. What I did wasn't that bad, so really who got hurt? And since nobody got hurt, the actions aren't that deviant. So maybe, yeah, I know that stealing's wrong, but this person is so wealthy, they have so much money that, like, what's $20 to them? They're not going to notice. And so, yes, stealing's bad, but this person's not going to be hurt by the fact that I took $20 from them. Right? This person's a jerk, and so they kind of deserve these mean things being said about them behind their back. And so what I did isn't really all that bad because no one's really getting hurt in that sense. All right, we could use denial of victim. They got what was coming to them. That person is a jerk and they're a meanie, and so it's fine for me to steal from them because they're awful. These people are horrible to our society. They're making things worse, and so it's okay for me to do things that make their lives a little bit harder because these people aren't worthy of talking to. Like during the Salem witch trials, right? To justify the negative words and slurs that were being used against these women in the community. Well, they're witches. Who cares about witches? They're bad. And so we denied their victimhood by saying that they almost weren't people at all. There's condemnation of the condemners. You can't be mad at me because you've also done bad things. So yes, I know I'm not 21 yet and I'm not supposed to be drinking, but mom and dad, really, are you going to tell me you never had a beer before you were 21? So you can't be mad at me because I know you've done the exact same thing. Or, all right, I missed curfew, But remember last week when you screamed and yelled and said all those mean things? That is so much worse than me just showing up a little bit late. So you can't be mad at me for this because you've done way worse. And then the last technique of neutralization, it would be appeal to higher loyalties. Right? This thing I did was bad, but I had to do it because something else was more important. So yes, I should be in class on time, but my friend was having a crisis in the bathroom, and so I had to go and help and comfort her, and my friend is way more important than anything I'm learning in sociology, so really, who cares? So we try to say that there was another thing that was more important, another obligation that was more significant, and so my deviant behavior really isn't deviant because that thing had a higher value hold, and I should respect that more than this minor bad infraction. All right, so go through, if you want to test your ability to recognize techniques of neutralization, I've got a link here. I think you have to go to my actual PowerPoint to open it. It won't work in this video. But it's to a Jack Johnson song called Cookie Jar. He's kind of like a surfer rock musician. And so in the music video, he illustrates techniques of neutralization. So go through, see if you can identify it, figure it out. Post it as a private comment, and if you get it right, I'll give you an extra credit bonus point. And so see if you can figure it out. All right, and now that you've talked about labeling theory, see if you can apply that to your chosen case study. Think about their status and their position within society. What is some stigmas that we might apply to them, a negative status or a respected status in society that encourages deviant behavior, them living up to those expectations? Are they guilty of using any techniques of neutralization, recognizing that their deviant behavior is excusable because of X, Y, or Z, and so trying to justify their deviance? So go through and why don't you fill in the labeling theory section of your worksheet, and then whenever you're ready, start up the video again and you can look at our last theory for the day. All right, the last one is called control theory. I can't blame your family, I can't blame society, I can only blame you for why you're being deviant. All right, you made the choice, you chose to perform these actions, and so it violated those norms of society. Right, what control theory states is that we try to control for human behaviors. Right, we have a lot of outer controls that are used. Right, these are things that society does, that our socialization unit does, things that other people in our society do to control our behavior and try to make us be conformist and normative. At the council, we have the student handbook and our laws that we have you follow, and we have established violations, the demerit system, the detention system, teachers giving you disappointed looks, maybe your friends not being friends with you, isolating you, saying mean things. All right, we have these negative sanctions embedded within our society to prevent deviance. And so what control theory would state is sometimes our outer controls are really, really enforcing. And the reason why most people are conformist is because we're so scared of suffering the consequences of these outer controls. I'm afraid of what other people might think. I'm afraid of having to serve time in prison. And so because of other people, that's why I'm conformist and I follow what others are doing. Right. The other half of control theory states that we have inner controls. We have inner forces within ourselves that influence our behaviors. Right? There are a lot of people who don't care if their teachers like them or not. They don't really care if they have to serve detention or not. Right? Your feelings about me have no bearing on what I'm going to do. Right? Instead, I'm going to do this because of myself. It's my own morality for why I choose to follow or go against the norms. It's my desire for fun. And so even though other people might look down on me, I had a good time doing this, so that is fine. And so our inner controls are forces within us that either prevent us from being deviant or encourage us to be deviant because our inner desires are way more important than any external things that society could give us. So a control theory would state is that an individual will be deviant if their inner controls and their outer controls are out of balance. right? If I have no internal control over my impulsive nature, then I'm probably going to be deviant. If I don't care about any of those outer controls, then I'm going to be deviant. All right, but if those inner controls or outer controls are working, then one or both of them will encourage more conformist behavior and therefore push us towards being more normative following individuals. All right, so take a minute, apply this last theory to your case study. All right, think about external incentives or negative sanctions that might prevent their deviance or an incentive that draws them towards deviance. Getting money, getting more respect might also encourage deviance, and that's an outer control. And think about their inner controls. What are their individual choices for why they decided to perform those behaviors? Was it pride? Was it respect? Was it for fun? Right? Their own morality of what they thought is right or wrong. So think about their inner controls and what might have encouraged them towards deviance. Right. Again, if you have any questions, I have my Zoom hours at noon today, or you can send me an email and I'll respond to it as soon as I see it. But take your time, fill in this part of your worksheet, and I'll send you back feedback tomorrow about anything to change before the final product is graded. All right, thanks so much. Have a good day, everybody.